So it is my pleasure to introduce you our alumni, professor of University of Malta, Ернест Качіа, who will present you the main topic, which is the really main topic for today, for IT Science Day. It is big data. And Professor Kachia will tell you in 2 lectures about open data, it is also big data, and then especially track for big data itself. So I give the word to Professor Kachia.
Well, first of all, thank you to the organizers for organizing this lovely, the event is great, the hall is fantastic, thank you for coming over. Usually I'm giving a lecture with my shorts and sandals usually because it's hot and I'm running about and I'm doing all of this stuff. So here I'm a bit, with a jacket, with a tie, I feel as if I'm, all. I also like to make it clear that I like participation, so maybe every now and then, if you are not against it, I will ask some questions and maybe you can give me some answers, or at least your opinions. So maybe the language is not a natural one for you guys also. I will try to do my best to try to make it as interesting as possible. At the end of the day, the last thing that we want is that you come here and you feel bored, and I come here and I feel, what am I doing here and all of that. So let's try and make it as interesting as we possibly can. Okay? Maybe for the second part of the talk, second lecture, I will have a roving mic, and so I'll be able to walk and talk at the same time, but for now, I'm anchored over here. So, I was told to give 2 talks, one OD, and another one on big data itself. And immediately, you see, you have a problem, because the 2 are so linked, one with the other, they are so intricately linked, they're so dependent on each other, that it's very difficult to try to separate the 2. So there will be a little bit of overlap, but still, you will see what the difference is. And let's start by looking at the difference. Open data. What do you think that is? What's good about it? What's good about me making all the information open? Okay, let me tell you this. Let me ask you a simple question here. For now, the currency, the international currency in the world is what? It is oil. It's energy. What do you think the currency of the future is going to be? Which kind of currency? Well, information. Basically, information is the currency of the future. Who has it? People say, if you have a lot of information, well, that's good. That's a problem for big data, because having the information and making no sense out of it is not good. So here, the value is in making sense of the information, but that comes in the second talk. Talk about that afterwards. But open data is like me giving you access to information to be able to make sense. If, for example, I want to try to understand what is happening in KPI, and I do not have information of all the students, their backgrounds, the history of the students, the history of KPI and everything, and I try to have all that information as accurate and as possible and as accessible as I can have, then I've got a problem. There's no way I can make these kind of I can't do this kind of reasoning. So opening information makes a big difference, and I speak out of experience. Malta, which is the country from where I come, at the moment is #1 in the EU for e-government. #1. We don't get to say it very often. Malta is good at #1 because we are, about as big as that. But when we are good at something, we like to say it very often, okay? And it is a big difference, like, 60% over the average of the EU. Big. Why? There was one small thing that they did. E-government in Malta made all the data that it was using open. What does that do? So the moment I open my information, what am I adding to the information that was not there before? Anyone have any idea? The moment I open it, what am I doing? No information? No ideas? Even opinions? I'm not going to mark you. No exam. I'm not going to give you marks. I'm not going to remember your faces, even, except of one of the pretty girls that are here. But I'm not going to remember your faces. So what do you think? What's your opinion? If I had to open in the information, what can I do all of a sudden? Pardon? With whom am I talking? Can you just raise your... Yes. Analyze it. Well, you're practically there. You're very close. The moment I open the information, I invite two worlds to talk to each other. Which are the two worlds I'm talking about? I'm talking about the world of society and the world of academia. They start to talk. Academicians, well, not academicians, I mean students, researchers, start to find out different ways of how they can extract necessary data, not necessary information, necessary sense, usefulness. We call it usefulness. They start to understand how to extract the usefulness out of that data. Before, the data was closed. It was there, it was growing, it was big, it was nice, it had a lot of potential, but no one did anything with it. Now, all of a sudden, I open it, and all the people who work, all the scientists, all the computer scientists have got very weird and wonderful ways of trying to do things with that information. And that is where the value is. Wouldn't you agree? The value added is at the top. Okay, I think I should start moving the slides. That's a good thing. That is, yes. So, when I say our good, well, okay, it says for the EU, ECA, and all of that, but it could be our good as everyone's good, okay? First of all, you have organization. When you open information, you have to open it in a way that it is organized. In other words, if you are going to give me a bunch of data, and then you are not going to tell me what the organization is, what the structure is. Remember, information equals data plus structure. So without the structure, you're just giving me the data. You want to give me the information, you've got to give it to me in an organized way. So it forces a degree of organization. And that means if it is organized, it becomes more available. You expose it more. Therefore, you are giving, well, as I said before, this interaction between academics, between the scientists and society. You're adding value, giving meaning. Let me give you an example of what I mean by meaning. Some of my students at the moment are working on a project which will analyze sentiment of reviews. What does that mean? I don't know how many of you have had the occasion of trying to book a hotel, say, online. What's the first thing that you do? You go to the reviews. Exactly. You go to the reviews and you start to read who said what, who did what, whatever. And sometimes there are, oh my God, hundreds. Wouldn't it be nice if you had a system that could actually go into those reviews and analyze the sentiment? Sentiment analysis is one of the main topics, research areas at the moment, which is very hot. And it will come back and it'll give you a summary and tell, listen, on the whole, in plain terms, on the whole, this hotel was found to be using certain terminology that you can understand at a go, very, very, very quickly. Now, to be able to do that, the data has got to be open. And the more data you have, and the more it is open, the better this kind of analysis can be. So that's the value added, one example of the value added. You can do a number of things, okay? Analytics means applying certain algorithmic approaches, some of them very mathematical. Some of them have to be provable. Some of them have to be formal, even. Applying certain techniques, certain algorithms to the data, which you have to, what we call, derive meaning. Because sometimes there is meaning which is hidden. I could give you information on each and every one of you here, each and every one of the students which are here, and the information is showing me one thing, but when I take it as a whole and I run certain analysis on it, I can derive information and say, for example, KPI is passing through a bad spell. I hope not, I'm just giving an example, okay? Which that information is not available on its own, but having analyzed certain behavioral patterns due to the data which I have, I then can come up with that additional information. And that additional information is where the research is where the money is. There is not a single company at the Malta, on the island, and abroad also, and I assume here in Ukraine too. If it hasn't begun, it will begin. Not a single company that is not doing and investing in heavy research in big data. They've understood that that is what we call the milk cow. That is where the money is. In fact, there was a talk by someone from IBM last week, or no, the week before. And I was not too happy, because one of the things that the person said was, and this was a guy who has about 300 publications and about 35 books. So it's not me, it's someone really big. And he said, look, mathematics is becoming not important. No? And then he kept on explaining how big data is important and all of that. And I couldn't believe that. I don't agree with that. That's, I don't know, bordering on stupid, I think. It doesn't make any sense. You know, it doesn't mean that big data and working in big data is pushing other fundamental topics out. Maths, computing, other areas have to exist anyway, because they are the foundations. They are the things upon which everything is built. If you don't do maths, you don't have new algorithms. If you have new algorithms, you don't have new analytics. If you don't have new analytics, well, there's nothing much you can do with data. So saying such things is a bit dangerous. I hope no one is recording me, because if this person hears what I'm saying, he's not my friend anymore. Anyway, obviously this helps research too, because this is the topic of collaboration. If you go and look and have a cross-section of the EU projects at the moment that are happening, most of them are big data oriented. Why? Because you can get people interacting from different walks of life, from different areas, from different backgrounds, from different countries, cultures, and they will all meet and they can work, because it is talking about information. And the more diversity you have, I'm a number of projects, for example, with universities from Eastern Europe, Bulgaria, Romania, pre-Baltics, and everything else. And most of the time, we are trying to align. The European Commission word is alignment, alignment, alignment. You hear it all the time. What does alignment mean? That means to try to get what we're doing in the West and what we're doing in the East and what we're doing in the middle, to try to align and to get into some sort of common European general practice, okay, which is like, for me, a dream. But anyway, this is what they're after. And the more you have participants from, then the more different they are, the more they enrich the data, the more they make the analytics worth it, the more they make them accurate. So see how it helps research. Sharing, I mentioned this is part of research, it's also true, but sharing is a little bit more. Sharing of information means that you can get even interdepartmental within the country, interdepartmental people working together. And that, again, going back to e-government in Malta, is one of the successes that we have, is that all the data in the country that has to do with people, that has to do with services, that has to, all of this information is open. So all the departments in the government talk to each other. They share a database, they share information, they derive new information, so new services for the people, you know, so everything is online. I forgot the last time I went in a queue or went into an office. I forgot when that happened. Operations, so yeah, you have a degree of creativity. When you're talking about operations, the creativity comes up in the derivation of new information. I've spoken about this, so I'm not going to repeat it. Innovation is something that you hear every time in universities, well, at least in our university. We have to prepare graduates that are innovative. Two words, innovation and creativity. They go hand in hand, usually, right? Now here I have a little bit of a theory, in the sense of, I personally believe that you can teach a degree of innovation. You can teach a degree of innovation, but you cannot teach a person to be innovative if the person by character is not innovative. But you can teach a person of how to use what he's got or what she's got up here and try to apply that in an innovative way. That you can teach. And creativity, I believe, you simply cannot teach. Creativity is a person. Some people are creative, some people aren't. You can open the doors, but the people have to pass through the doors that you open. But nonetheless, I can give you all the necessary tools, I can give you the platform, I can give you all the potential to be able to be as creative as you can be as a person through open data, And obviously the creation of more information. Is someone trying to keep some time here because I have a habit of running and not knowing when I stop, and then people get angry and I get very tired. So, in other words, we try to render the invisible visible. That's what open data allows you to do. Something which is not generally visible becomes visible. And this is a very important thing, because this is what happens even in mathematics. This is what happens in physics. How do you try in physics or in maths or in biology even, or chemistry? How do you try to render the invisible visible? What do you do? Anyone care to tell me? No? The word begins with M. Last time I checked, understand began with a U, not with an M. Well, measure is the precursor for science. No measurement, there isn't any science, okay? So that's not the thing. But how do you render the visible invisible? Okay, to be able to measure it, the first thing you've got to do is make it visible, right? You cannot measure the invisible. So before that, someone had their hand up at the back, or, yeah? I'm still not hearing the M word. Reason, I'll do it. But how would you reason? Okay, you have a point, right? You want to reason. So I give you an algorithm. It's in my head. And I want to share it with you. I want to reason about that algorithm. Me and you. And someone else will come and reason about it. What's the first thing that I have to do to be able to reason? What do I do with the algorithm? It's in my head. The word is nearly. Model. You would create a model. You model everything. Everything that happens in the real world, what we call real world phenomena, have got to be modeled to be able for us to reason about them. It could be the stars, it could be an algorithm. You have got to model things to be able to reason about them. And this is exactly what we do, well, in maths, more than modeling also, it is coming up with expressions, situations that you can formally explain. But in physics and in other, it's modeling, it's always modeling. And that's what we do in open data and big data. We try to model as much as possible. That is how we get things to be visible. Just a bit of an eye-opener. This is the situation of how ICT is progressing. As you can see, the emphasis changes over the years. The emphasis used to be very much on globalization, as you can see back in 2004. But if you see what's happening now, I'm not going to go through the whole graph, you can read that for yourself. If you see what's happening now, most of the important infrastructure, most of the economic movement, growth, is now across technology factors. It's all to do with who has the best technology. So in the past, it used to be who has the best machines, the faster machines, then it was the networks, then it was the infrastructure, then it was the interconnectivity, the internet, then it was, and everything, time is different. Now, the technological leverage is the information, is the access to the information, is the, as I said, what you get from the information. That is what's going to make you, that's the competitive edge. Just to put things in perspective, the slide, I don't like these slides. I know I made them myself, but my slides usually are, just a few words and then I talk and talk and talk. But this one's got much more in it, but mostly for you to read, okay? I know you all can read, so I'm not going to repeat what's on the slide. But this is just to give you a general idea of how data is actually growing. Have you ever heard of the SKA? square kilometer array that's being built. Well, it's practically more than halfway through in Australia and in the South African part. Never heard of it? It's a set of arrays, a set of antennas, kilometers long, which is used to measure, which is going to map the cosmos. Now, I know because Malta is part of the project, other countries are part of the project also. At the moment, do you think the internet is big? Do you think there's a lot of information on the internet? Now, at the moment, if you had to freeze the internet now and find the information that you have on it, do you think that's a lot of information? The whole world, the whole internet, what do you think? That's not a lot of information. That is a hell of a lot of information. Really a lot of information. Exabyte of information. And we don't know what we're going to do with it. Google is generating information like there's no tomorrow. Everything that you do, every keystroke somewhere or another is recorded. Some of it is lost immediately, but some is kept. But everything is being generated. That's why there's a lot of information. Now, if I had to tell you the square array, just one project, the SKA, is going to generate every day, as much information as there is today on the whole of the internet. An exabyte of information. What are we going to do with that information? Usually people say, oh, we will store it. Okay, very good. And then what? And can you store it? How fast will you run out of space? So the whole concept here is get, use, discard. Or rather, get, use, summarize, discard. That is the way it has to be done. But to do that, you need the algorithms. You need the processing power. You need the analytics. You need the scientists to tell you what is important, what is it, how are you going to use it, what information you need to derive out of it. So as you can see, I gave you one example only of how information in the world is going crazy, out of control. It is like you have become a millionaire all of a sudden, all right? You've created a killer app. Microsoft has bought your company. All of a sudden you have $6 billion in your pocket, and you do not know what you're going to do with them because you have had only in the past 6 hryvnia in your pocket only, if that's worth anything, right? So this is the technology of the future. Handling open information, handling big data is really what people are after now. I'll be talking more about this in detail and with more information in the second talk, obviously. Now this is on open data only, not big data per se. Okay? So you need a catalyzer. The catalyzer means something to get you to do things, something to be able to do things with, like in chemistry, something that catalyzes a reaction. You need this catalyzer. The catalyzer in this case is open data, the openness of the data. That is what's going to make you do things. If you don't have it, and you know it exists, it's out there, you don't have it, there's not much that you can do with it. Simple as that. Okay, but you need what we call content technology to go hand in hand with the open information. Content technology is anything that has to do with computer science, informatics, and most importantly, another area, which is the area I have missed out here. So computer science, informatics, in some universities, computer science and informatics are mixed in one department or one faculty. But there's another area which is very important, which is now, I would say, nearly coming into #1 position when it comes to analyzing big open data structures. What do you think I'm talking about? Which area is this? You're nearly there, but robotics is inside this area. Who am I talking to? Machine learning is also part of that area, but it's got a global name. There even was a film once called this. Artificial intelligence, AI. Okay, there was a film once, right? So artificial intelligence and the work that is done in the field of artificial intelligence, which includes machine learning, fuzzy logic, robotics, web agents, adaptive systems, all of these things are now very important in the use of analyzing and getting the value out of open data. And here we have a situation. The open data is very nice, but usually some of it is structured. Most of it is unstructured. Anyone care to tell me the difference between these two? Structured data and unstructured? Maybe give me an example. Order and chaos are another two ways of saying the same thing, you mean? Yes, but an example, a concrete example. What would be an example of unstructured information? Yes? Okay, well, the definition is right, but can you give me an example, a practical example now of unstructured? You see, this is the thing that students have to do. They've got to always bridge from the theoretical, what you've learned, to the practical. That's a very important thing. I know that's what my students do also, so it's no problem. It's everywhere in the world. Well, emails, log files. Okay, so there's Amazon.com or whatever, and they're keeping a log file of people who are leaving reviews or other things. Or you could have emails with comments. That's unstructured data. There is no structure. You do not know what the email is going to contain. You do not know what the log file, what the reviews are going to have. There's no structure, but that's information that you require. You need it to make your business more targeted, for example, to improve it, to fix out the problems which you might have. That's unstructured information. Can you give me an example of structured information? Pardon? So anything that you know the structure of before, for example, logins, addresses, whatever, that's all structured. You know exactly what the fields are, you know where to find, you know where to go to look, you know how to make a search on that. You know how to extract information from that. But how are you going to extract information about, say, demographic movement of clients, from their feedback? So you want to make sure that the feedback you are getting is from clients that have been living in a certain place for a long time, that are not clients that are moving about, changing their addresses or what have you. How are you going to get that information from unstructured text? Difficult, not that easy. How are you going to get it from structured text? Easier. You go to the field and you check how many times it's been changed, what have you. Or you go to the log file of the database and you do that. So we've got this situation. Information that is structured, information that is unstructured, and how we're going to deal with that. And I will talk a bit more in depth about something called, you might have heard, something called Hadoop. Have you heard about that? Okay, I will talk a little bit more about that in the second talk. Or else I'm going to end up talking about big data during open data also. I told you it's going to be a difficult thing. Okay, so what you have is two parts. One is known as the open part, and the second one is known as the commercial proprietary part. The open part allows more collaboration, and I have mentioned why, and I have explained why. Okay, and you get industry, academia, and government who are working hand in hand. And the nature of the projects and the nature of the work which you have over here, apart from being interesting, generates also money. Okay? For our university, that's a very important thing. I don't know how KPI works, but we get hardly any money from the government, hardly any money. So all the money that we get revenues from our projects. Our people who do projects get money in, and that's how we live. Also, it helps sharing technology. That means things that we do not have experience in, because we do not have large amount of lecturers or resources, we can get that kind of input, that kind of knowledge by working with others. So we call that filling in mutual lacunas, as it were. Where would one place open data, or OD? Where one would place OD? I've tried to draw a picture, because I always believe a picture is worth 1,000 words. I'm a software engineer by training, by profession, so I know the meaning of modeling, and I know the meaning of diagrams and the meaning of drawings. So I've drawn this, and I have placed open data as that arrow, triangle arrow, which you see over there. What do you think I'm trying to show with this picture? Now this is a trick, you see, because usually this is the only way you can get a student to look at a picture and to try to understand it, is by asking him or her, what do you think I mean by this picture? Then you are forced to look at it. That it moves you to the more value-added analytical component of information. It being open allows you to make that transition from the generated information, which could be structured, unstructured, we said, and is, yottabytes. Now we're talking about a yottabyte even of information. Okay? We're running out of words, by the way. We don't even have what to call big data anymore. Someone is now talking about a bronchobyte even. IBM and HP are using the term bronchobyte. We haven't come there yet, but we might have to. We're running out. What's after a bronchobyte? I don't know. Anyway, so we're moving from from the information that is like there, it's part of the world, is the electronic shadow of the world. We're moving from that reddish, orangish thing in the middle over there, right? We are going towards the organizational thing, basic information, basic structures, go and get the information you look for, this sort of thing. Remember, we are moving from you going to look for the information to what? What are we moving to? When you go on the internet, when you Google stuff now, what do you feel that you should be having? Should you go and look for information? Or should the system be intelligent enough to say, listen, you're looking for this, I think this is what you mean, I'm going to present you with this information, I'm going to link it with this other information, I'm going to prioritize it in this following list, I'm going to present you with this other list, I'm going to compare them, and I'm going to do this for you. You're looking for a solution, very good. Right? You're looking for a solution, you're looking for something because you have a need. You want to satisfy that need, you need a solution. And you want that solution to come to you. You don't want to have to go to look for it. So you go to the news. You want to know what's happening in Ukraine, for example, and you go to the news. Do you want to have to stay going to BBC, and you want to go to CNN, and you want to go to Al Jazeera, and then you want to do, and then you want to read all of them, because you don't just read one, because you've got a brain. You want to read many, and then you want to make your own mind up. If that was the case, you're going to waste half the day. That is not the world we live in nowadays. The world we live in nowadays, I want it fast, I want it accurate, I want it now. So the information, the system itself now has enough information to be able to give you what you want without you having to go to look for it. And then obviously you can, if you want, to refine that afterwards. So that yellow one, that's still not that. That's still just the information for you. That's the searchable information. Then it moves you towards relevance that we're talking about here, information that is linked, relevant to each other, because I could be looking, say, for example, for pot. Okay, I want to buy a nice pot for my flowers at home, whatever. And I go and write pot. Guess what's going to come up first? All the possible hits that you can get on marijuana, because that's called pot also. Do I want that? No. But it's linked. So wouldn't it be nice, that this research is old, they've been doing it, wouldn't it be nice for the system to understand that my pot, because I looked for it once, my pot is a flower pot. And next time I look for things, it's going to give me relevant search results and not irrelevant, relevant to me. Right? If there's someone who wanted pot, he would look for pot, get something on cannabis, and the next time he comes in, he gets more information on that. But that's relevant to him or to her, not to me, for example. Well, I'm not a student anymore, definitely not relevant to me anymore. And then you move on to the blue circle on the outside, which is where we're working now, which is where we're located now, which is big data analytics, making sense out of that, right? And that's the collaborative entity that we always talk about and all the activities. So open data allows that movement. That's what I'm trying to show. No, don't try to read it. It's just one of those nice pictures that scares the audience a lot, you know. Just to show you how data is referenced, how it's linked inside Wikipedia. This is sort of the heart, the data linkages, the structure of information inside Wikipedia. Just to give you an idea of how complex the situation is. If you go into each one of those bubbles which you see over there, you would find tons of other models, tons of other data entity relationships. You'd find, you know, it will explode out of even comprehension. And this is nothing. This is just part of the internet. Part of the internet, okay, granted a substantial part, but just part of the internet. Now I am telling you that very soon you'll be getting the whole of the internet every day in data. We have a proven evolutionary track. Look at books. I like to say in computing we don't do anything new. You might agree with me, you might not agree. I say in computing we do not do anything new. Do you agree? The gentleman here is saying no. You think we do new things every day? Okay. Okay. Anyone else think they want to support the colleague or take it against him? I don't know how influential he is. Maybe he's the head of the student organization. I don't know. Old part of it. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. How's that? Ah, now you've mentioned an interesting word. Now you say we apply. We apply. In reality, if you see what we do in computing, it is computing, after all, is a tool to do what we do anyway, faster, more accurately, more reliably, and so on and so forth. But in reality, it is doing what we have always done with books, with conversation. Take chats, you know, everyone else chatting, you know, everyone talking. You could be there, he could be there, and he's chatting, oops, with him, no, because it's too difficult to look at him and talk to him for whatever the reason, okay? But everything that we do is our natural human behavior. We've been doing this all the time. If you think about it, it cannot be otherwise. You would not use computing, you would not use a tool to do what you do not do as a human being. Then what would you do as a dog? What? Right? So it is, we're not doing anything new, We are inventing new ways of how to make it easier, more pleasant, more effective, more error-free. That, yes, that every day we are doing that. I agree with the gentleman. But otherwise, the processes are there, what we've been doing before. Even when it comes to, because this brings a problem, not the track, but open data as a whole. The main problem of privacy, which I have not spoken about yet, and I'm very strange that no one of you lifted their hands. I don't bite. I don't bite while I'm here. No one lifted their hands to say, open data, very good, but what about privacy? No one mentioned the privacy issue. In Europe, the privacy issue at the moment is red hot, white hot. And this, the concept of IP, you know what IP is? Not TCP IP. IP, intellectual property rights, IPR. Right? That means you publish things and you've got the right to do with them or not do with them or to lease them to someone else or whatever, but your property. What happens to that? What do you do with that? What about the right to be forgotten? Have you ever heard of this? The right to be forgotten. Do you think that is a very important right? So, okay, I don't know, you made a mistake once, okay, and someone took a photo of you while you were, I don't know, in a strip bar, okay, and they put it on the internet, or they put it on a Facebook page, and someone copied it and put it on the internet. Is that photo going to be with you till you die? Is someone, when you are 80, you know, and someone is going to come and say, hey, look what you were doing back, you know, is someone going to do this? And how pleasant is that going to be? So the right to be forgotten is the right to have information completely removed, to be forgotten from the internet. And that is easier said than actually done. And we know that is another whole different talk. I'm not going to go into that, right? IPR, the right to be forgotten, privacy, these are all very important issues, and they require a lot of talks. I have given a number of TV programs even on this, because everyone is scared about this. But my argument here is that this is nothing new, again. This is simply the same situation like what you had with books. Only now, instead of a book being something it's difficult to get a book from here to America in 2 seconds, but now you can do that. That's the only difference. It's difficult to have a photo of you, you know, with a mistress and your wife going to see it, and half of the world going to see it like this. Very difficult in the past. Now, very easy. This is the difference. So information is like any other tool. It is a knife, a chainsaw, or call it whatever you want. If I give you a knife, you can use it for butter, you can use it to eat with, or you can go and kill someone with it. It's really up to you. So I'm going to give you a tool, and how you use it, it's up to you. And this thing with information is the same thing. I'm going to give you the right to get that information, the openness of the information. I'm going to give you a right to analyze it. I'm going to give you a right to extract information that hitherto maybe was not available. I'm giving you many rights, many strengths. Now, how that is going to be used, if there's no framework to govern it, that is dangerous. And that is what I mean. We've passed through this in Malta. We're stabilizing now, but we've passed through it. And my suggestion to you as students, and even the nation as a whole, is very important to make sure you get the framework of controlling the data and the privacy of people right before you give the liberties. Not the liberties first and the framework comes afterwards, because the damage will be done. So as you can see, this isn't anything new. This is what used to be done in the past also. I mean, I remember times when in Malta, for example, before you have children, you do not go to the doctor. In long past, before my times, I'm talking about, you know, back in the late 1800s, the 1917, 1417, whatever period. Before you go to the doctor, before you're going to have kids in a family, you have to go to someone else, more important. Guess who? The parish priest. The parish priest. Why? Well, it's not only a religious thing, it is a religion thing also, you know, because we're Catholics and all of this, blah, blah, and very strict. But another thing. He was the person who had all the books. He used to read about this, he used to read about that. He had the knowledge, he had the Latin, he had the English, he had the Maltese, he had everything, okay? So he was like your open data source. He had all the data coming to him, he used to study, he used to read. The other people in general were maybe not as educated as he was, and he could give you, okay, it used to be tinged by religion, so it had a bias, obviously. But he was capable of giving you a summary of what needs to be done. Right? If it has to do with contraception, if it has to do with how to feed the baby, if it has to do how many babies to have, if it has to do how you're going to bring him up and what, you know, this or the other, he was the person. Now we are doing this ourselves through open data and big data. How am I doing on the time? by the way? How am I doing? How much do I have? Who's 20 minutes more? Okay. Anyway, we can talk afterwards. People who wish to meet me and talk or disagree with me or whatever, please feel free afterwards. There's a lot that is going for open data. And the first thing that comes to one's mind is how it can help different areas of society. I've given a few examples over here. We have got projects, big projects, more than one, in all of these areas. Geospatial, plotting the whole island, seeing where things are, even up to, areas between houses and plots, whatever. And then you can get information that will help our national organization that plans the land on the island. It gives it invaluable information. So we have a number of projects there. We have projects in the medical field. Medical information, very important, making sense out of a patient's diagnosis, making sense out of demographics, out of what is happening in areas. Now, our island, compared with Ukraine, is like for maybe 3/4 of Kiev in size, not more. Okay, that's how big it is, how small it is, right? But yet, it is very important for us to understand what is happening, because if something goes wrong, if there's a disease or something, it doesn't take long to affect the whole of the island because it's so small. So we have got to be in control. So we have a lot of projects, but this can be applied. It's being applied in the US, it's being applied in Germany, to make sure that you know how even the common cold, how that's affecting your nation. Because let's face it, there are situations, and probably you know, when there are times in the year when, for example, the cold, or grip, prastuda, grip, whatever it is, okay? When you have anything of this sort that happens, like 1/4 of the workforce is out. They're at home, they don't go to work. It actually affects the economy. In our case, it does. So this is important to see what is happening when and how, and to take measures against this. So it becomes not only a medical issue, it becomes a medical issue bordering on the economic issue also. This is how important these things are. Okay, then in comes the dragon, or we call it the dragon, it's really the EU. In comes the EU and makes things, well, they say they make things easier. I think they complicate things a little bit, but anyway. And the EU comes in with its funding mechanisms. Most of the projects in the EU at the moment, or let's say one of the main trunks of projects where the money is on big data and cloud computing. I will be talking about cloud computing more in the second part also. Big data and cloud computing. So what they do is they say, listen, if you have projects that can demonstrably, justifiably prove that you're going to improve a situation in society in the following ways, then we're going to pay you. That's good and that's bad for us, we find, because researchers, like probably most of the researchers in KPI, also the researchers are free spirits. You want to research the area that interests you in the way that you want, and the tempo that you want, so on and so forth. But all of a sudden, now you've got the infrastructure on top of you which says, do this, give me that. If you don't do this, I don't pay you this much. If you do this, I'll pay you more. And it's a bit of an interference. But there is a wide spectrum of disciplines which are touched with this. So in other words, anything you do on the cloud, anything you do with big data, open data, chances are you're going to get good funds from the EU to help you. And I believe there are schemes, there are people who know more than me about this. There are schemes that facilitate Eastern to Western, Eastern to EU collaborations. So if one had to look at the future, as one can see it now, because you can never tell, there's always twists and turns, especially in ICT. You know, things. If I take you back 10 years from now and ask any one of you, what is the future of Facebook, then you might not guess that it is what it is now. If I had to tell you 15 years ago what is searching and how is this going to progress, you might never guess, you might never say that searching is going to lead to big data and open data and all the technologies around that we have now. And so you can never tell the twists and turns that are going to happen. Same with communication. And by the way, keep in mind that the movement of humanity is predicate to one and one thing only. Which is what? That means the growth, the evolution of humanity is predicate on one thing. Pardon? No. When I say it's predicate on, that means it's subject to one thing. What is that one thing that makes, if you go back in history and analyze human history, what was that thing that always happened to make human beings move from one evolutionary step to the other? Not evolution in the sense of the Darwinian evolution. I mean evolution in the sense of societal evolution. What was that one thing that made human beings always move one step ahead? One and one thing only, and I'm sure you know it. Pardon? No, that's a result. That is not the reason. That is the result. Work? You don't know the Maltese, they are so lazy. No. Pardon? You're nearly there. Communication. Every time there was a jump in communication, there was a jump in societal behavior. So communication is very important, we know it. As a software engineer, I know it. As students in computing, you know it also. If you do not communicate ideas, if you do not communicate between yourselves, there's little that can be done. There's no improvement that can be done, okay? But that's a topic for software engineering, that's a different thing. So in the future, I still see that it is communication and all the tools of communication are going to move us ahead. Okay. The last jump that we had in communication was the internet. On the invention, on the widespread uptake of the internet, we had society behaving in completely different ways. We had people learning in completely different ways. Have you ever heard of MOOCs? MOOCs? Massive online training, right? That's based on communication. Now you can go and take a course at MIT, you can go and take a course, even our university has a few. You can take courses online. You can do this because the data is open. Students share information because the data is open. Students get to learn more, get to produce more because the data is open. Again, without a framework on top of this, you have a problem. Because then it can lead to plagiarism, problems with rights, as I said, and everything else. But topic for other discussion. So, you cannot predict the future. There are too many things, too many factors. You cannot predict the future accurately. But ICT is definitely going to be there. Unless, obviously, as films go ahead and show you and say the aliens attack and they break all the electronics and they break all the infrastructure, well then basically we're back to the Stone Age again. But anyway, but if that doesn't happen, ICT is going to be the driving force behind everything, from organizing your holidays all the way up to coming up with a new discovery and patenting it. That is going to be done through ICT. And because ICT isn't anything without the data in it, open data is the way for the future. And the work you're going to do in open data and the techniques you are going to try to find, you are going to try to research, you're going to try to produce to make the access of open data more reliable, to make the verification and the validation of open data more good, to allow frameworks of privacy to be put in place, to protect the users, and every other aspect, everything else, all the research that you will be doing within all of these areas, that is the driving force for the future uptake of open information and big data. But there are a few things that we do know already. One is that we know what society is doing, we know how society is behaving, we know what they like doing, we know that society likes talking, we know that people like sharing information. If you go to Twitter, you will see tweets like, I will be back soon, I'm going to have a shower. And I'm thinking, why the hell should I know that? Okay? People will tell others that they're going on holidays. People will tell others what they're going to wear for the evening. You know, what shoes I'm going to choose, so that when I go out with my friends, all right, we do not clash. I hope it's not the boys who are saying this. I'm assuming it's the girls. All right? But what can happen? In Malta, we had, for example, we had a number of cases, many cases, when people used to spend all the day analyzing tweets and analyzing changes of the status on Facebook to go and see which houses they can go to rob. Because they know that this person has gone on a holiday, or this person is going out for the evening. And they might say also, and we're leaving our granny at home. You know, so I know there's one old woman in a house by herself, that's where I'm going to go. Okay? So again, if you do not one, educate the people of how to use these tools. So okay, a 6-year-old boy, and I'm giving him a chainsaw. You know, a chainsaw. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. If I don't bring that person up in maturity to understand, if I don't give a necessary infrastructure to protect that person, then I'm doing more harm than I'm doing good. So that we do know. From history, we know what happens. From one thing we move to the other. From books, we went to priests. From priests, we went to universities. From universities, we are going to the digital world and everything else. I'm not saying universities are not going to be there. I'm just saying they're going to augment it. Right? We have this situation in Malta at the moment where I can choose to make half of my course or even more online. Right? What the university hasn't taught yet, and I hope they never think about this, is that they pay me the same rate when I'm doing it, when I have to come into the class, or if it is online and my students are just seeing the course at their own pace. I hope they never think about that, but I'm sure they will at one point. And that could be a problem then. Okay. Connectivity is what it is. It's on the increase. We're connected in every way, in every possible way. I was amazed last time I was in Aruba, an island in the Caribbean. This was a month ago, and even on the beaches, in the middle of nowhere, I put my phone on and I had Wi-Fi. In the middle of the Caribbean. Fantastic, phenomenal stuff. And I couldn't find any houses around. I don't know where it was coming from. Anyway, and it was free. Globalization is a phenomenon which we observe in industry and in modern life. Can you give me an example of globalization in industry? It's pretty clear, right? All the companies, you know, one company buying the other company, trying to globalize, so on and so forth. At the end of the day, probably we're going to end up with Microsoft and with Google, who knows. But can you give me an idea of globalization from a social point of view? Sense of belonging is the word, you know, people belonging to things. So this is the club of, I don't know, car enthusiasts. This is the organization of women who are beaten by their husbands. I don't know, I'm inventing here, okay? So there's this idea of globalization happening everywhere. Again, nothing new. Nothing new. These organizations probably existed in the past. But now it's easier to organize them, easier to have them, easier for them to exchange information. Again, out of control is bad. We are becoming more and more technologically aware. I am sure you find this even with your parents, with yourselves. There's a generation gap, but the generation gap is getting smaller and smaller. I doubt if any of you have parents who are not using the internet, for example. You might, but very few, I suppose. Okay? So people are technologically aware, not technologically as the person who looks under the bonnet of the car, but at least technologically aware as the person who at least drives the car. So they know what the car is and they can drive the car. And it's an important thing. If you want to bring up your children being able to use all these new fantastic tools that are going to be coming out based on open data and big data in the correct way. If you yourself do not know what is happening, there isn't much that you can pass on to your kids in that way. And therefore, we have what is now known as an on-demand world. On-demand means if possible, I want it good, I want it cheap, and I want it now. The first thing, even me, and I'm not your generation, I'm much older than you are, but I've been working in technology for a long time, that's why. But when I go on the internet and I'm looking at, I don't know, a pair of shoes, or I'm looking at a car or a motorbike or whatever, the feeling I have is, if I'm seeing it, if I've liked it, if I decide to pay the money for it, if I've already put a deposit, I would like to have the car now. I would like a pipe in front of me, like this, and the car to come out of the pipe. If I order a pizza, same thing. I want the pizza now. If I order a service, I don't want to order the service and get a note saying, okay, your order has been noted, now pass by office number whatever, or do this and come and pick it up from here. I don't want that. I want it done. I want it finished. I want the service. Now, obviously, there are many people that are saying, well, you know, this is also bad because people start not talking to each other, people start not moving, people start doing everything sitting in their house. But then that is up to you. That's the problem of the knife again. I'm giving you the knife. If you want to get the knife and stick it into your chest, that is up to you also. But it doesn't stop you from creating the tools to make, as I don't know who said, I think the gentleman over there said, our scope, like I believe everyone's scope, should be to make our life easier. Easier, to make our actions more efficient, to make the work that we do more effective. That is what we are after. And after all, this is what all this is leading towards, what it's doing. For an on-demand world to exist, it's got to be a connected one. For a connected world to exist, there's got to be big data. For big data to be useful, the data has got to be open. So you see the link. On-demand, connectivity, a lot of information. The information has to be open. See the train. We already do this in a number of areas. We exchange messages, we exchange statuses, we send tweets out telling people how nice or how bad our experiences were. We do all of this. E-government is here to stay. Most companies are switching to e-government. Sorry, most nations are switching to e-government. Obviously, the bigger the nation, the more difficult that switch is. We have collaborative environments. You have any idea what a collaborative environment is? Have anyone used a collaborative environment? Are there any software engineering students here? More in terms of doing work or doing research, platforms, okay? So if I want to build an application, nowadays, well, all the companies in Malta at least, they do not rely only solely on their own employees or employees local to the island. They would outsource, and they do this over platforms. So you might have a developer who's in India interacting with a team of developers who are in Malta. But you cannot do this efficiently unless you have a collaborative environment over which you can do this. And this is one example. One example of a collaborative environment only. But you can have collaborative environments in any area of human activity. I know about these in software engineering because that's what I do. But they could exist everywhere else. You could have a collaborative environment for exchanging slides, for exchanging notes among students. We have that. And that's called Moodle. You might have heard of it. Right? And that's a university-wide thing which is expanding, and always plugins and plugins and plugins to it. And students are using it to talk to each other, to exchange notes, experiences, even to tell another student, I'm going to be late for the lecture. Please tell the lecturer that I had a problem. True or not, who knows, but whatever. Okay? So these collaborative environments are simply environments that are shared by like-minded or people with the same needs and expectations from the internet. Having all these things together is what is actually dictating the shape of the world that is going to be. I truly believe that if one had to sit down, I haven't had the chance to do it, to do research in the sense of find out more about all these techniques of behavior of people, using technology as the underlying principle, one can draw quite easily, or relatively easily, a picture of how the future is going to be. Because these things have got to coalesce at some point. Then in comes, to make things even worse, in comes cloud computing. But cloud computing is really, it's not a precursor, it is really something that helps big data be even more accessible. Cloud computing is nothing in reality new. It used to exist in the past. Maybe you even used to use it in the past. If you used to handle your accounts in the past, your bank accounts, and used to do that online, chances are you were doing that over a multiple number of computers on a network. It was a virtual cloud, but no one used to call it a cloud. If you order stuff on the internet, probably your orders are passing through a cloud. But now, this interconnectivity of resources is so important that now they've given it a name. So from moisture in the air, it has now become a cloud, which is like what happens in reality. Okay? So now you have a definite cloud. With it, you've got technologies, how to configure it. What types of cloud? IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, what type of cloud it is, how it works. What to look out for. Even the models that you use to build the software, we are changing them. Right? So you've got extensions to UML, for example. Do you use UML? I don't know. Those who do software engineering might use UML. If you use UML, you have extensions to be able to produce stuff for the cloud. If you use a simple technique like a DFD, a data flow diagram, I don't know if you do that, if you do that too, right? Then you'd have extensions, and that has to be used also for the cloud. So the technology that's being used is underpinning and dictating the techniques that we use to model. I'm coming back to the modeling issue that I said earlier. And the model is what human beings use to reason about things. So my conclusion is that the technology is now affecting the way you reason. And that's correct, that's how it should be, because at the end of the day, you are creating things to be able to work on the technology which you have at hand. I'm finished? Okay. So it's what I like to call the e-everything phenomena. Nowadays, place an E in front of anything and it becomes cool. Right? So it's photography, e-photography, boom, that's cool, everyone wants a piece of it, okay? If it's business, e-business. If it's commerce, e-commerce. If it's education, it's e-education. If it's to learn, e-learning. Anything, if it's health, it's e-health. In fact, that's a very important area, e-health. So everything, this e-phenomenon is indicative of exactly what I'm saying, is that everything is now being put on the digital world. The digital world is growing. The way to use it effectively, or else you're going to be using like your brain 10% of it only. The way to use it effectively is to manage big data. The way to manage big data is to open it so that many people from around the world, from various areas, can go in there and do things and give you the value that you need from the information. There's much more that one can be said. In fact, I'm 18 out of 32 slides, but you know who I am. I'm always like that, okay? There's a lot that I can say more, but next time we will meet after lunch or whenever. I will talk to you more about the big data issue itself and the techniques behind it and everything that's linked to that. Well, for now, thank you very much, and I hope you found at least something interesting in all of this. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.